Hey, good morning, criminal justice practitioners. I know it's been a while since I spoke to you, probably about a week now, but I've been at my full-time job and we're actually hiring someone for a police academy that I'm getting started here in Texas. So kind of exciting times and kind of um, trying to get things wrapped up with that. And I think today is going to be the final day we get things wrapped up with that. But anyway, that's my story. And that's not an excuse. So hopefully everyone is doing well. I will say, based off of what I'm seeing, yes, everyone is doing well. I will caution you though, I'm kind of noticing some things. Please look at the PowerPoints. Those answers that are on the exam are in those PowerPoints or watching those videos. And I highly recommend, as I've always have, that you need to look at that information before you tackle that exam. It will only help you and it will expedite it, because if you know it, if you rehearsed it, if you reviewed it, when you come to answer those questions, something's probably gonna ring inside your head or a light bulb's gonna click. I know that's how it worked for me, and you'll be able to answer that question accordingly. All right, so got some questions on this. Look, first of all, I want to show something real quick, right? So here is a paper that I'm going to look at here. So here's just a plate, right? And I'm going to demonstrate something. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my blood here, right? And I think I told y'all I got some secret blood, right? So I got to kind of shake it up. It's not real blood, so don't freak out, okay? I would freak out. I never freak out about all my years I did law enforcement. I never freaked out about someone else's blood. But if I'm bleeding, oh my Lord, I'll just pass out dizzy as heck, right? Anyway, so I'm going to look at this. I'm trying to open the jar because it kind of gets a little stiff. It's kind of based with sugar and stuff. I think I told you that. Anyway, so whenever you're looking at blood spatter, right? Remember that high velocity? We looked at that. That's kind of that that's what you get with a gunshot wound, right? And then of course you have that medium impact, kind of the blunt force trauma thing. But also you got something that's called the arterial spurt. So if someone was shot or cut in one of their femoral arteries, like your neck or your arms or your legs, you could bleed out within a matter of 30 seconds to a minute, right? Unless you can stop that bleeding. It's pretty much fatal at that point. Of course, they'll gush out, and I'm sure you've seen Hollywood. They project that. I've actually seen real videos where people have actually gotten slashed in the neck and all that, and they're still running around for a few seconds, but the blood's just kind of spurting out as the heart's beating. Those are your arterial spurts. Now, what I get a lot of issues on is kind of like the smear, right? Or what is called the transfer type thing, right? So somebody like I may have blood on my hand here, which I do, right? And you can see it kind of going down, right? But then watch what I do here, right? I kind of smear it on this document or this plate here, right? And I'll do it again for you. But there you go. I'll smear it on there. That would be a smear, right? That means someone's has blood or a transfer, smear or transfer. Either one of them is really, but I prefer to call it transfer. That means that someone had blood on their hands and they came into contact with it. It could also be a footprint. So a lot of times, if you ever looked at the O.J. Simpson case, you will see that O.J. Simpson plus every police officer that was there stepped on the blood of Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, and were just tracking all over, and they were leaving their footprints behind. So they were transferring, they would pick up the blood, it would stick to it, cohesiveness, right? And then they would, as they walked, they were transferring it something somewhere else. Remember that Locard's principle. So now you see how all that makes sense, right? So just remember that transfer. I'm kind of seeing some issues with that transfer type print scenario. Anyway, so I'm going to save my blood. But anyhow, also what you need to look at, and I'm going to go back here and look at something. This is, of course, a baseball bat, right? And what that is, well, when you get blunt force trauma, right, get knocked out, you're going to have that medium velocity impact when somebody gets hit in the head or the face, whatever the case may be. At that point, once you start cracking open that skull or tearing apart through that skin, you're going to have that blunt force trauma, and you're going to have what's called medium velocity spatter, but also cast off. So every time that the person hits, if there's blood at the tip of this barrel, right, or the barrel of this bat, it's going to cast off, right? And you'll be able to see the direction it's actually going in, right? Remember, it's going to hit us the ceiling or the wall, and when it hits, a part of that blood is going to ricochet, and it will kind of give you the direction of travel of the bat. So it'll go back and forth, back and forth. You may see this on the ceiling. I've actually seen that, and on the wall, right? So that would be your cast off type scenario, right? Anyway, so another thing that we want to look at is, and you guys may not be familiar with this, is I'm going to go ahead and grab this little guy here. Is you've seen a video where we talk about gunshot wounds, where you see a lot of the high velocity spatter occur, right? So anyway, so for a gunshot, you may see um, a head wound where, and this is a gun, this is a prop, right? This is a training gun for police academies, believe it or not. And so if someone is shot in the head, what you'll do is, that projectile will leave the barrel of the gun and then it will enter the skull. And normally what happens is, of course, depends on the caliber and everything, and how close this gun was to the head or the body. It will leave a small entry wound, and as the projectile continues through the skull, it will leave a larger exit wound. Depending on how the person was shot, were they shot in the back of the head, were they shot in the front of the head, were they shot on the side of the head, whatever the case may be. So, but what I wanted to explain is, whenever you come to a crime scene and you're the investigator, and someone has been shot in the head, well, you want to be able to find or look at some things. So number one, how close was the gun to the head, right? If you look at this head right now, I just bought this, by the way, so excuse me. Normally what you'll find is when the gunshot or the bullet, the projectile enters the skull, what you will see is that small entry wound, again, depending on the caliber, and depending on how close the weapon is, you may see actually some gunpowder singed around the entry wound. Now, if the gunpowder or the gun is close to the person when they're shot, then what you'll see is what we call a tattooing effect, which means that the gun was so close to the individual that when they were shot, the gunpowder did not have enough time or enough distance to dissipate in the air, right? And so what happens is these gunshot particles or these gunpowder particles are still kind of on fire, so to speak. And what happens is they don't fully dissipate in the air. They'll kind of leave little pin marks around the entry area of the projectile. And with some blackish, colorish gunpowder, whatever you want, whatever that is, right? And it'll leave those little pin marks all around the entry or the entry part of um, where the projectile went in. Now, of course, the further the distance, right? The further the distance of the gun and the gunshot, the less likely you will have tattooing. Now, if it's still kind of close, you may not have a tattooing effect, but you may have what's called a smudging effect, which means that it didn't necessarily singe in the skin of the individual, but around the entry point of the projectile, there's still some gunpowder, but you actually may be able to brush it off, right? So smudging, occurs at a greater distance. Tattooing effect at the entry point is very close range. So always remember that. Now, again, remember entry point for the most part, depending on the caliber, is quite small compared to the exit area at that point. Another thing you need to keep in mind, and this is why it's important that we try to get these guns to kind of clarify some things, is whenever someone is shot, especially in terms of the head area, you'll have something that's called, when they're shot and that bullet enters, so that projectile enters the skull, what's going to happen is the force is going to project blood, skull fragments, and brain matter back at you. And so what we call that is called back spatter. Okay, it's coming back at you. And some of that stuff's going to end up on your perpetrator. Some of the gunpowder is going to end up. You remember where we talked about, or we didn't really talk about this, but gunpowder residue is going to be on the person as well, because the shot and stuff like that, shooting the gun. But in addition to that, if they're very close to the individual, they may have blood on them, on the gun, uh, brain matter, skull matter material. All that's going to be called that, that back spatter, and it's going to project on the perpetrator as well. And that could help you resolve a crime also. Now, as the projectile enters the skull, it will then exit. And once it exits, that exit wound is what we call, at that point, was what we call front spatter, right? So back spatter upon entry, front spatter upon exit, meaning, the thing is moving forward, the projectile is moving forward, or if it's this way, the projectile is moving forward. So this person was shot on the side of the head, you would get that back spatter, right? And then as the projectile kind of exited the other side of the head, then you would have what's called front spatter. So as the bullet goes through it, it's also going to exit, and it's also going to push out bodily fluids, brain matter, skull fragments, right? And so that's what you want to look at, okay, when you're kind of looking at a gunshot wound, especially to one that was unfortunately to the head, okay? So hopefully that helps you a little bit kind of understand some things. If it doesn't, just let me know, call, or not call me, but you can Zoom me if you want to set that up, but you can also email me. All right. So y'all be careful, stay safe, and God bless.